And the biggest thing, to answer your question that I got involved in was I was involved in a scheme to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. And somebody brought the germ of an idea for me, and we created that into a huge enterprise, I would say, where we were generating $8 to $10 million a week.
How was that implemented? That scam on the gasoline tax front?
Well, initially in New York, and I think throughout the country, the tax on every gallon was collected at the gas station. The gas station operator was obligated to pay the tax. While that was happening, we had 350 or so gas stations that we either owned or operated, and we installed people in all of them. And to make a long story short, it would take the government about 10 months before they would come down on a company that wasn't paying tax. And we had a way to manipulate them so that it took 10 months. And then they changed the law. And they said that you had to be a licensed wholesaler in order to collect the tax, and then you had to pay the government. Well, I had 18 companies that were licensed to collect tax on every gallon of gasoline, and the same deal. It took them about 10 or 11 months before they came down on us. And we had accountants working for us that were able to keep them at bay for that length of time. And then by the time they would come down on a company, we'd just close the doors. That company would be over, and we'd move to the next license. So we did that I ran this operation for almost 8 years.
So how come the government didn't clue in if they were losing the amount of money that you were siphoning off? You said you ran this repeatedly, so if I've got it right, you set up a company, you had about 11-month window before the government would come in and enforce its tax collection. So you could collect money for 10 months and then just kill the company and then start another one.
Correct.
And so, and you managed to do that for 8 years.
Yes.
So why didn't the government clue in?
Well, they couldn't. They were investigating us. They were trying to clue in. They just couldn't figure out how we were doing it or what we were doing. And, it was a pretty sophisticated operation, and we just tried to stay one step ahead of them, which we were able to do. And it lasted that long. I mean, I had an incident once where 2 FBI agents, I had also a couple of car agencies. I had a Mazda agency and a Chevrolet agency. And they visited me in my offices once, and they brought me outside, and they said, look, we have an idea what you're doing. We know what you're doing, but we can't figure it out. Just tell us, help us, and we'll give you a pass on all of this. Now, obviously, I knew they weren't going to give me a pass, and I didn't cooperate with them at the time, but they knew something was going down. They just couldn't figure it out. We just stayed ahead of them.
And so how did it finally fold up after 8 years?
Well, my partner, who developed the scheme along with me, he was actually the one that brought me the idea. He had a small operation out in Long Island. And he got in trouble on an unrelated case, a tax issue, a personal tax issue that he had. And at the time, we had he was on trial, and we had a compound in Panama. And the reason we had it there is because there was no extradition between Panama and the United States at that point in time. And so he was flying back and forth to Panama, and there was at some point in time when he thought he was going to be convicted on his case, and he didn't want to take the conviction, so he fled to Panama. And the FBI somehow, they went and kidnapped him in the middle of the night. So they bypassed the extradition laws, and they brought him into Florida. And at that point in time, he agreed to be a cooperating witness against me. And I was the target at that time. I had several investigations going on me at one time. And once he became an informant and started cooperating, he told them how the whole scheme was coming down, and that's when it fell apart.